Today, we're going to talk about Jennifer McCabe. Now, she's part of the Karen Reed trial. Greg, tell us about the videos we're going to watch.
So these videos are from the first Karen Reed trial, the one that ended in mistrial. And this is her friend and the sister-in-law of the homeowner where O'Keefe was killed or died. And she is on the stand in cross, remembering that cross controls some of how questions are asked. I guess what you need to be able to work from here.
Yes.
So not only did you have a clear view, you indicated in your words you had a good view of it, right?
Correct.
Then you noticed that the SUV was gone after the 12:45 text, right?
Correct.
So you're looking at that SUV over the course of between the beginning text and the end text. It's about 19 minutes, right? 12:27 or so to 12:45, 18, 19 minutes, something like that, correct?
Correct.
You maybe add a minute because you got back up and didn't text, and the SUV was gone, right?
Correct.
So you would agree, we just do some basic math, you're looking at that SUV on average about every 3.5 minutes.
I guess I'm. If you want to pull out the times and you can look at them.
Well, we talked about the times, and you agreed that you were texting between 12:27 and 12:45.
Correct.
Right? So if you were just to divide that by 5 times, getting up and looking, I don't know, I'm doing the math in my head, maybe it's every 3 minutes or so?
Correct.
Okay. At no time did you hear any noise or sound outside that was unusual?
No.
You didn't hear any squealing of tires or squealing of brakes?
No.
You didn't hear any screaming or yelling?
No.
You didn't hear any loud voices or foul language or door slam?
No.
You didn't hear any verbal argument or the revving of an engine, anything like that?
No.
As a matter of fact, you didn't.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
So when it comes to behavior profiling, the best time to look for data points is all the time. It's not during these high points. And a lot of people think the best data shows up in these big questions, but behavior leaks constantly, especially in these quiet moments or when somebody thinks that they're safe. So we see a lot of up left eye movement for accessing to answer some of these questions. That's going to come up later. And she's saying, or the attorney's asking, did you hear noises like squealing tires or engines? Right at this moment, there's a forward hunch, kind of a lean down. And one thing our body does in times of stress or fear, our arms will come in, our shoulders will come up. We'll try to protect arteries and soft spots. We don't have any bones right here, so we'll kind of bring that rib cage down to protect this little area. And we'll see that hunch. And right at that same time, we have an increase in blink rate significantly. And this is both change and cluster on the 5C checklist, changes and clusters. But note for a second that there are times when we see nothing because nothing is present. Stakes are very important when it comes to deception detection. So one key skill to have if you're raising the stakes is, can I preface my question? Can I do things to heighten up this person's level of anxiety with deception before I ask the question? So big lies usually hide between these little small movements. So if you've ever asked somebody where they were and they start coughing and shifting their weight or giving too many details before the answer starts coming out, it's usually a gold mine. So think about this as we're going through these next few videos. It's not the answer, it's the packaging sometimes. It's the packaging that's wrapped in. I'm in Las Vegas, by the way, if you're wondering about my background. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, Chase, I love the fact you point out that dropping her head and moving forward. She doesn't turtle, which is interesting because some people are going to jump to turtling, which means she's being defensive. She's not. She is outright aggressive when she leans her head forward and does that. There's absolute hatred between her and this guy at this point. Now, here's a data point for you guys. This is a 3.5-hour cross, and this is 1 hour into it. So she's already pretty agitated by the time we get here. And she's saying, look, yes, I'm angry because of the way we've been treated. You can feel that agitation, and it's palpable in how she wants to talk to this guy. Let's walk through a handful of things. There's a lot in this one. And I love the other thing that you pointed out, when she feels safe. We're going to see many times in this video when she feels safe, a change in body language. She starts off with some short answers and short stroke nods that are compliant without being helpful. It's a good indicator she's agitated. I'm going to do what you tell me, but she's frustrated. She's wooden in movement. She does a Desmond Morse tongue jut in response to the situation. See her push her tongue between her lips. Desmond Morse said it's baby's first no or first refusal. I think it's the same thing in most adults. Eye lock is good, but she accesses as she speaks. The eye lock is because of aggression, I think. But when you ask a question about 1245 text, I agree with you, Chase. She goes over and starts looking, rifling through her head to a memory. Most people don't make hard eye contact in normal conversations. We don't do this. It's why we think people are being deceptive when they do that. It's because when I ask you a question, your eyes roam around your head to look for information. And there's no really easy way for us in 2 minutes to tell you how to baseline that. So we just tell you that it happens, and we'll point out what we think something is as it occurs. There's also a couple of other interesting things she does. Her thumbs go up and her palms go out, and she's got head shaking as she tries to work out the frequency of the equation he's doing. She's like, what? That's good, because we'll see that again when she feels like she's helpless and has no control. And if you don't think she's irritated with this guy, listen to that exasperation, and Scott, to quote you, on my last nerve, is she does a semi eye roll on him. She just kind of rolls her eyes up in her head just a touch. And then, I mean, there's just so much in this one. It's really good to see where she goes with this. I'm going to leave it at that and say that just pay attention to, because a person shrinks in a chair isn't always turtling. Her neck is not protected. She's put her head forward, and that's not protected.
At the Behavior Panel, our goal is to help you see behind the surface, to spot deception and analyze the true intent behind people's words. It is a mission that I personally feel strongly about, especially in today's bias and overwhelming media landscape. And mainstream media tends to blur the truth and make it really hard to see through the chaos. This is why all of us are proud to have Ground News as a sponsor. They help readers look beyond the mainstream narratives and uncover the patterns in the way that today's news really spins and frames the issues that are going on, or even just fails to cover them in the first place, like they don't even talk about it. So for every story that you read on their app or their website, you get instant access to every outlet that's reporting on that thing. On top of that, there's a breakdown of each source's political bias. For instance, you get this report of how subjective their reporting tends to be, and if they're independently owned, or are they funded by corporations or governments? Are they getting their money from somewhere that's influencing what they're saying to you? So Ground News really helps you see the subtle ways that the media can very heavily shape our public opinion. I'm not even immune to it after studying all this psychology stuff, and it's good to be able to see behind the curtain. I'm actually in the process of writing a book. It's almost done, on media brainwashing. And I think they're one of the most practical solutions that I have ever seen. So check it out by scanning this QR code or go to ground.news/TBP. Our viewers get 40% off unlimited access, whether you subscribe for yourself or if it's a gift for somebody. Ground News is independent and subscriber funded, not by any special interests. So by subscribing, you're not only just getting a great product, you're directly supporting our work here at the Behavior Panel. Let's go back to the show.
Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, lovely. Look, reiterating what you're saying here, Greg, she's monosyllabic, very clear, direct, simple answers. There's something good about that, I would say. High blink rate throughout, but she's sitting in a courtroom. I mean, it's like, it's going to be high stress. So, you know, we're always looking for change. We're always looking for change. And just like you say, Chase, you know, all the time, you know, not just under the highest moments of stressful questioning, but around all of that. Is there any stress? Does somebody know what's coming up? Are they preempting that with a change? So a good baseline of relatively a lot of stress throughout. Just one, what I might call, after something you named there, Chase, a hygienic adapter, that she just flicking her hair back just once. We'll see that later on. But again, it's a change, but it doesn't rank very high for me. There's nothing else that comes with it. There's no cluster. We will see a little bit more later on, but at this point, It's a change, but it doesn't rank high for me. The eye accessing, I'm seeing that as well, along with breathing changes at the same time. That just says to me, okay, she's actually thinking about these questions. There's not so many stock answers. There's like, okay, question came. Some of them she thinks about the breathing changes. She gives an answer, sometimes monosyllabic, but she gives an answer. She's thinking about it. So, going through some mechanics here of events. She seems to me to be under stress because she's in court, but none of the questions themselves seem to stress her any more than any other at this point. Listen, just want to have a shout out to somebody as well, because last week, who was it we were looking at last week with the Prince Harry piece? I can't remember.
Her name is tough to, I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Char something.
Yeah.
Shanduka.
Shanduka. Yeah. And I noted this big kind of thrusting shoulder shrug. One of our panelists who's from Zimbabwe, same place that she came from, said, yeah, in Zimbabwe, that's it is, Chase, like the joust. It is like seeing you off my territory thing.
Nice.
So look, the great thing is just how all of us learn all the time. I saw something that I'd never seen, but not that I haven't seen a shoulder shrug, but not at that velocity, not with that intention. Rang a bell for me going, that I've not seen. I wonder if it's like that joust that Chase talks about, but in the shoulder. Turns out from one point of data from somebody from Zimbabwe going, yeah, you're right. So what a great show this is, because even people who are experts learn every week. Greg, what was your thought?
Yeah, while we're doing shout outs, I did a show last week for Josh Ritter on Courtroom Confidential on a YouTube channel. Great interview. He's going to call and interview each of you guys. If you haven't been to there and you're a true crime person, go see. He was a DA and prosecutor in LA. He knows Lonnie, our friend.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you mind if I mention the Psychopath Award since we're all in it?
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay. On Sunday, this weekend, we have the Psychopath Awards, and we have the stars of body language have all come out, and we're accepting and giving away awards for psychopaths. And we had the best time doing it. And I appreciate you guys doing all the work on that. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Everybody here did one, and they all came out really good. So there's that. Chase, I think you're up.
No, I think it's you. It's you,
Who's
Scott.
me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, I just want to reiterate, Scott. Yeah, go and see Scott's shows. Scott's put a lot of work into this, and from what I've seen of it so far, it's really, really good. So get in there and have a look and tell your friends and family. Scott.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Well, I'm all whacked out on flu dope, so I'm coughing and sneezing and getting shits and giggles every 5 seconds because I just got up a few minutes ago before we started. We did one show before this. This is our second one, and my brain is shot, so I can't, from a fair point of view, say anything about this woman in this thing because it'd be drug addled. So let's move on.
Many people, Scott, would say this is your best work yet.
That's what I've been hearing. They're hoping this is going to go this way.
Yeah.
Oh, and I would be
Keep
in
up the drugs.
Exactly. I was get off the drugs, man. I was supposed to be in we're at Las Vegas with Chase right now. I would have been there if I hadn't gotten the flu.
Oh.
So.
Yes,
So not only did you have a clear view, you indicated in your words you had a good view of it, right?
correct.
Then you noticed that the SUV was gone after the 12:45 text, right?
Correct.
So you're looking at that SUV over the course of between the beginning text and the end text. It's about 19 minutes, right? 12:27 or so to 12:45, 18, 19 minutes, something like that, correct?
Correct.
I mean, maybe add a minute because you got back up and didn't text, and the SUV was gone, right?
Correct.
So you would agree, we just do some basic math, you're looking at that SUV on average about every 3.5 minutes.
I guess I'm. If you want to pull out the times and you can look at them.
Well, we talked about the times, and you agreed that you were texting between 12:27 and 12:45.
Correct.
Right? So if you were just to divide that by 5 times, getting up and looking, I don't know, I'm doing the math in my head, maybe it's every 3 minutes or so.
Correct.
At no time did you hear any noise or sound outside that was unusual? Caught your
No.
attention? You didn't hear any squealing of tires or squealing of brakes?
No.
You didn't hear any screaming or yelling?
No.
You didn't hear any loud voices or foul language or doors slam?
No.
You didn't hear any verbal argument or the revving of an engine, anything like that?
No.
As a matter of fact, you didn't. As a matter of fact, the entire time that you looked out at that vehicle with that clear and that good view, you didn't see anything out of the ordinary, did you?
No.
And you would agree with me, as you looked at the SUV, you're looking over the lawn to the SUV out at the street, correct?
Correct.
There was no obstruction between you and the SUV. You've already testified to that. Is that right?
Correct.
And you could see everything in your field of view.
Correct.
And then you saw the SUV gone. It had driven away after 12:45.
Correct.
So I have a question, Ms. McCabe.
Mm-hmm.
Where was the body?
I have no idea. I'm assuming the body was on the front lawn.
The problem with that is you were looking at the front lawn, weren't you?
I was looking at the vehicle and where it had moved.
Do you know what field of view is?
Would you like to explain it?
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, this is one, my note at the top says awareness, acceptance, defiance in the face of accusation, and a set up by an attorney failing. This is a beautiful clip because when she starts off, when he starts talking, you see some contempt or disdain in the left side of her face, or in the right side of her face, I think it is, as to where when she realizes where this question's headed. And she's starting to get really agitated here. Then the attorney almost does a Perry Mason thing, like he's going to try to paint her into a corner to do this, and she has no part of it. It actually becomes kind of anticlimactic when he lowers his voice, lowers his tone, changes his cadence, and she just doesn't respond the exact way he thinks she will. You see, again, her chin is progressively moving forward. Now she's got a fry in her voice when she says no. One of the first times we've heard it. That's aggravation, I think, with the approach he just tried. And I think it's becoming clear to her where he's going with his defense now. This is defense saying that Karen Reed didn't back over him, that in fact you would have seen the body and you didn't see the body. So it must not have been there the night before. I think this blink rate at where you were looking across, that's processor, to your point, Chase, you say processor speed. That's her brain trying to, I don't think it's stress. I think it's her going, do. Oh, I know where you're going with this. Then she responds with an we haven't heard as to yet, just before he lowers his voice for that. Then there's that chin boss of acceptance. That kind of, okay, you got something there. Accompanied by that same exact helpless hand rise and no nod that she had around, I don't understand where you're going with this calculation. I don't understand your numbers. I think she's keenly aware of what field of view is, and she just does this in open defiance. I think she has no love for this guy, and we can see it across the stage. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree. With the first question here, you didn't see anything out of the ordinary. We see this blink rate increase. It's a flutter right after the question. And this is kind of like when your brain has a bunch of apps running and we need to kind of close out all of these apps and start getting rid of them so we have more cognitive awareness. This is where we really start seeing a deviation from baseline. And that's the key. You could stare at somebody blinking all day, but unless it's different from their norm, it's meaningless. So eye accessing here changes to down left, right after her denial, which is kind of an internal dialogue. We're talking to ourselves, rehearsing something in our head. Then we see something that's called a sclera flash. And this is the widening of the eyes that we see during her answer. And this is the brain's fight or flight starting to kick in. We widen the eyes to take in more visual information when something feels potentially threatening to us. This is where you're seeing the brain on defense mode right here. She doesn't need to run, but her nervous system is saying something dangerous just came into the room. It's not about the lawyer, in my opinion. It's about what's inside her mind at that moment. What she's thinking of in that moment is what's what's stressful. So, and just keep in mind as we go through these next few videos, behavior is never random. It's always in service of something. So it's not really about catching a tell. It's about reading the why behind that tell and what's going on in the room. That's what we're trying to do here, especially in the next 2 or 3 videos. There's going to be some big revelations. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so she's asked by the lawyer, was the view unobstructed? We see a significant change in her eye accessing on that. But from my point of view, I think she's truly going to recollection. She's actually going into the picture in her head to go, yeah, was it unobstructed? Or is there anything that could be seen as an obstruction? I would suggest, just in case the lawyer goes, yeah, but hang on, I've got a picture here and look, there's an obstruction. And she's checking that she's going to be accurate around this. We hear tone raise and volume raise. I think she dislikes now the accusatory nature of where this questioning is going. I think that speaks as well to Chase, that the flash in the eyes there as well. I think, things are ramping up for her. She head gestures the movement of the vehicle. That's good as far as I can see. She doesn't gesture with her hands, but she shows, the vehicle is moved and she's looking for the movement of the vehicle. Great. That's honest storytelling as far as I can see. And then she gets combative with a question. Would you like to explain it? Would you like to explain it? She says back to the lawyer. Yes. So she's getting annoyed now, angry, upset, frustrated, a number of those things, most likely. The issue here is what she did there isn't that likable. And so we got to be careful as we watch this, that as things progress forward, she is going to potentially become less likable to us as an audience. And I think that was the first thing she did that would make us go, well, you've been a bit shirty, a bit rude. That's a bit unnecessary, isn't it? What's she hiding there? What's she got to get shirty about? What's going on here? So we've got to be careful that we don't mistake her annoyance there and upset of the line of questioning for annoyance at being potentially found out around some deception. Greg, you got a thought about this?
Yeah, no, Mark, I agree with you. The big thing we need people to get across is while believability for the jury is important, that's the single most important thing she has to do. Is he could undermine her. And we collectively are going to be able to look through agitation, and that doesn't mean guilt. There are other ways to pick that apart. Amateurs immediately, oh, she got agitated, she must be guilty. That's a big difference.
Yeah. Scott, any last thing to say on this one?
Yeah, Mark, in court, I've never been to any kind of court in London before. Are they still wearing the wigs, or am I imagining?
Yes.
Tell me about that. What's up with that?
Absolutely. Well, they wear, they're silks, so they have gowns. Some of them, if they're very special, will have their silks in a red bag. That can be very special, and their wigs. But yeah, you wear a wig, which harkens back to the days when people had lice in their hair and would have to shave it off, and you'd wear a wig to look something of authority. I think they're made out of horsehair.
Maybe I'll try that next week.
Horsehair. Yeah. You can make them yourself. Make your own, Greg, and have your own. Kangaroo court in your backyard.
Yeah.
But yeah, they still wear the wigs.
Okay. Where do you get them? They got a wig store, or is it
somewhere in the courts.
Barrister supplies.
Yeah. Barrister supplies.
Legalwigs.com. They got a 20% off this week.
Right now?
Yeah.
I'm going to look up and see if barristersupplies.com is available.
Yeah.
I'm in.
As a matter of fact, the entire time that you looked out at that vehicle with that clear and that good view, you didn't see anything out of the ordinary, did you?
No.
And you would agree with me, as you looked at the SUV, you're looking over the lawn to the SUV out at the street, correct?
Correct.
There was no obstruction between you and the SUV. You've already testified to that. Is that right?
Correct.
And you could see everything in your field of view.
Correct.
And then you saw the SUV gone. It had driven away after 12:45.
Correct.
So I have a question, Ms. McCabe.
Mm-hmm.
Where was the body?
I have no idea. I'm assuming the body was on the front lawn.
The problem with that is you were looking at the front lawn, weren't you?
I was looking at the vehicle and where it had moved.
Do you know what field of view is?
Would you like to explain it?
Okay, whenever you're ready, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. McCabe, I want to go back very briefly to something you said just before we broke, and that was in respect of the statements that you attribute to my client out of the scene. You said, well, there was an officer possibly asking questions, or it could have been a female EMT, and I wasn't answering questions about that, correct? Hence, you didn't say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Can you be clear on your question?
Let me rephrase that. Before we broke a few minutes ago, you had said, the reason I didn't say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, is because I was never asked. And the subject never came up about what an officer asked her when she declared that. So I just didn't offer it. And then you said, or it could have been an EMT.
Yes, I'm unclear who was there.
Isn't it true that at the grand jury, the question that was posed to you, and this is counsel page 208 of the grand jury, the question that was posed to you is, quote, so what happens next with yourself, Ms. Roberts, and Ms. Reed? And your answer was, so there are different, police officers getting statements from us. At one point, I'm standing with Ms. Reed, and she's saying, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? And there was, I believe, an EMT, a female, standing right next to me and listening to her yelling, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead? Was pretty much nonstop. Remember that testimony?
I do.
So in point of fact, you were answering the direct question about what happened in front of the police officer and the EMT, correct?
There were multiple police officers and multiple EMTs present.
So now this is another police officer and a different EMT.
I'm not saying that.
Okay. But nowhere in this did you say that she declared the words, I hate him. Correct? We'll agree on that.
Correct.
Your Honor, I have an item I would like to have marked as next in order.
Okay.
Question. May I approach?
Yes.
By agreement, Your Honor, that will be Exhibit 96.
Thank you.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
I think she's stressed by some inconsistency here near the start. The eye fluttering is a great confirmation of the first tell that we kind of established. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to come up soon. And remember, that's kind of closing out the apps inside of somebody's brain. And it's typically someone also does this when they're dealing with a stressful idea or a stressful thought that they need to get rid of so they can speak. There's a slight, what I would call innocence display during this final third of this clip. Her teeth are closer together and not moving very much, kind of concealing some anger. But there's this hair tuck behind the ear. Greg's going to talk about that, no doubt. Then we see the eye flutter behavior. So there's two eye flutters that we kind of see usually. There's kind of rapport building and there's closing apps. So let's look for the rapport blink versus the app closing blink. So think of the first as I'm here with you, I'm building rapport, and the second as I need to shut down this thought really quickly. That's kind of the difference. Rapport blinks are slower, more natural, like your system is syncing with the other person, and these little app closing blinks are fast, more fluttery, like a browser glitching or crashing. It's more of I need to stop this internal process quickly. totally different motive that's happening under the hood between those two things. There's a head tilt there, kind of an innocence display. We display our neck when we want to appear innocent or curious. But don't confuse that innocence display with proof of innocence. I don't want that to get tied up in anybody's mind. The body kind of speaks in these archetypes. What we care about is, does this pattern fit the situation or is it manufactured? Does it fit the situation or is it kind of put on? Is it a performance of some kind? Mark, what do you got?
Yeah. So, Greg, am I right that this video happens? They've just come back from a recess of
Yes.
some sort. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So there's a bit of because it feels like there's a bit of a reset to me. She's back. She's not as heightened as she was in that last video that we watched. She's more back to where she was in video one that we saw. A little bit of a reset. She's calm. She's assertive. She asks for clarity around the question. I'd listened to that question a few times and I couldn't quite work it out. I was like, what the heck? Where are you going, man? Where are you going with this one? So I couldn't quite work it out. So that strikes me that she probably doesn't have set answers ready to go because she's asking for clarity on the question. If she had a set answer, she'd probably just deliver her best go at a set answer to her best idea of what question she thinks she's going to be asked. So she's seriously asking after the questions and wants to clarify them. We don't often find people who are being deceptive want to clarify questions so much. They'll tend to want to give a quick answer and get on and get the hell out of there, you know? She's not afraid to correct the record, to go, no, it was like this. So she corrects the record in this. She's not mirroring the questioner's dramatics and energy around this. The questioner is now ramping up quite a bit. My guess is to try and get her ramped up, and she's not joining on that now, either because she knows she shouldn't join in on the dramatics of that, or she just hasn't experienced what he's trying to, suggest she has experienced. She is in a different world from the one that he's dramatizing in front of her. So again, video 3 here, it looks good for me in terms of somebody giving a relatively consistent record of what they thought was going on at the time. Scott, what do you got on this one?
You guys, I'm whacked on the flu, so I can't, whacked on flu dope, so I can't say anything.
All right, I'll take mine.
Oh, sorry, dude.
That's okay. I figured you wouldn't remember.
Right,
You got the flu drug.
Yeah.
So everybody, here's one thing I think about her. While she's agitated, she's also pretty damn cool, all things considered, with what's going on. And I agree with you, Mark. People who are trying to hide something often will listen to your squirrely question and answer it to get plausible deniability. They're like, okay, I understand the question. They usually don't clarify and say, tell me exactly what you're looking for so I can give you an answer and it can go on the record. That's not usually how people respond. I have a feeling she may have been around cops because she's getting a concise question to know what you're going to ask. I think that initial head toss is an adapter, a release of nervous energy as she starts to understand what he's coming back at. If there were not restrictions on the way you ask questions, and criminal procedure will say how you can ask questions, whether you can ask leading and that, or what kinds of questions you can ask in the courtroom. And I'm sure we could go look up Boston's criminal procedure and figure that out. But if there are no procedures in place, no limiters, you would ask those questions better to say, what did you hear Reed say to the first responders? She would say, bam, bam, bam. And she would likely take a moment to clarify, well, she said this to the police and this to the EMT, this to the male, this to the female. But because he didn't ask it, that we didn't ask it open-ended, he asked some squirrely compound question. It allows her to evade very effectively and move on and say, what are we talking about? There's not a lot of blinking this time. There's some, but there's not a lot. To your point, Chase, it's not stress blinking. It's just not agitated. And while you see she's agitated with this guy, it's not looking like she's stressed over what he's asking. When the focus leaves her, and this is one of those cases you're talking about, we see her push her hair behind her ear. She loses the stress. When the focus leaves her and goes to the bench, you see her push her hair behind her ear. I've agitated people by calling that I'm just a girl. And you see women do that in a lot of ways, like It can be a display of innocence, that softening of, female ears versus this, showing that ear, all of that kind of thing. It can also be a, hey, get ready, I've had enough of you, and they put their hair behind their ears. So you have to take it into context. But all of this aside, she looks pretty contained and pretty calm because she's agitated with the guy and still not letting it bother her a whole lot. That's all I got. Scott.
I'm out. Ooh, that was good. Well, okay, that was a tie. That was a tie. Really was.
Excellent.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. McCabe, I want to go back very briefly to something you said just before we broke, and that was in respect of the statements that you attribute to my client out of the scene. You said, well, there was an officer possibly asking questions, or it could have been a female EMT, and I wasn't answering questions about that, correct? Hence, you didn't say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Can you be clear on your question?
Let me rephrase that. Before we broke a few minutes ago, you had said, the reason I didn't say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, is because I was never asked. And the subject never came up about what an officer asked her when she declared that. So I just didn't offer it. And then you said, or it could have been an EMT.
Yes, I'm unclear who was there.
Isn't it true that at the grand jury, the question that was posed to you, and this is counsel page 208, of the grand jury. The question that was posed to you is, quote, so what happens next with yourself, Ms. Roberts, and Ms. Reed? And your answer was, so there are different, police officers getting statements from us. At one point, I'm standing with Ms. Reed, and she's saying, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? And there was, I believe, an EMT, a female, standing right next to me and listening to her yelling, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead? Was pretty much nonstop. Remember that testimony?
I do.
So in point of fact, you were answering the direct question about what happened in front of the police officer and the EMT, correct?
There were multiple police officers and multiple EMTs present.
So now this is another police officer and a different EMT.
I'm not saying that.
Okay. But nowhere in this did you say that she declared the words, I hate him. Correct? We'll agree on that.
Correct.
Your Honor, I have an item I would like to have marked as next in order.
Okay.
Question. May I approach?
Yes.
By agreement, Your Honor, that will be exhibit 96.
Thank you.
The calls to Nicole were deleted from your phone before you turned that phone into law enforcement, weren't they?
Not by me.
By somebody else?
I never deleted any calls when I willingly handed my phone over.
You claim that you didn't delete calls, but you do know that your phone was forensically analyzed, and those calls were in the deleted file folder, correct?
I have seen that, but there were 20 calls, all in a group that were all deleted. So cherry picking a few makes it look a different way.
Okay, so we'll get to those. I'm not cherry picking anything, Mr. McCabe. I'm asking you questions about the records.
Which I would love a copy of if I could see.
We'll get to that in a second. I'm just going by your memory. You've seen these records a bunch of times. You've been questioned about these records a bunch of times, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we know that you called at 6:07, 6:08, or thereabouts, and about 6:23. 2 to Nicole, 1 to Brian, correct?
Correct.
And you'll agree with me that notwithstanding those phone calls, by the way, did you leave voicemails?
No.
When did you hang up? Before it went to voicemail, or was it into voicemail before you hung up?
So it was a bit of a hysterical scene that morning, and I was in a state of shock, and I was just calling my sister and my brother-in-law. They did not answer the phone. I cannot tell you when I hung up, because it was a hysterical scene. I was in a state of shock. Everyone was running around. And what seems to be forgotten is that my friend was lying there on the ground.
Oh, I don't think anybody's forgotten that. You, in fact, did not leave voicemails for any of those 3 calls, did you?
Again, I don't have my phone record in front of me.
And that's because Nicole didn't get any voicemails, because the calls were answered, right?
The calls were not answered.
You do agree with me that Brian Albert being a police officer, never came out of the house, right?
Correct. Neither did any neighbor.
I know you'd like to continue editorializing after the fact. There's probably a time and a place for it. This isn't it. If you can answer my question, I'd ask that you do that. Did Brian Albert come out of the house?
No.
Did Nicole Albert come out of the house?
No.
Thank you.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Look, it's ramping up for me now, more aggressive vocally, especially around this idea of the deleted calls and cherry picking. 20 calls, she says, and she pops the mic on the T of the 20. So clearly some effort and emphasis put around that there's 20 calls in this deleted pile, and therefore the prosecution here is cherry picking around these deleted calls. She doesn't like this at all. Then there's this tilt of the head that she does twice. I think this is very similar, Greg, to the hair behind the ear maneuver, if it's that signal before somebody attacks. It's what I would call a feint, which is you are saying, you know what, I'm listening, I'm harmless here, but actually you're going, you give me one more of those and I'll come at you. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That is, when she does that, that's a warning sign that she is not liking how this is going. There's a lot more vocal clicks now as well. So the stress is up in my mind. There's anger starting to come in the teeth. There's also sorrow. The mouth sides go down around my friend was on the ground. She is, I would say, adamant about nobody quite understand, or certainly the prosecution here, the questioner not understanding the emotional severity and potential chaos of this situation, that her friend is dead and all kinds of stuff is going on, and the annoyance of him cherry picking from calls at this point. Again, it seems to me to fit the scenario that we're looking at here. It's not out of place, I think, for the scenario we're looking at here in terms of somebody feeling like they are being unreasonably finger pointed at and evidence being cherry picked around this. Greg, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, Mark, one of the things we all say all the time is people get aggressive and angry and defiant when they're being wrongly accused. And that might be exactly what we're seeing. This is an interesting one, though, because he gets her on the ropes and we start to see some vulnerability followed by more defiance. Look, we always talk about baseline. And I get people in comments who'll say, you can't possibly know this person's baseline. I'm not talking about their baseline at home, eating Cheetos. Everybody can finish that sentence because we say it so often. What I'm talking about is in this stressful situation, what's normal versus what happens when we see changes, spikes, deviations. Here's an interesting one. There's a bunch of change we see in this versus to now. At not by me, when they said, were they deleted? Were their phone calls or text deleted? Not by me. Boom. Single shoulder shrug, and her chin moves over toward that. That doesn't mean she's lying, but I think, Scott, I'll let you talk about that in just a minute. With Joe Navarro said, most of the time you see it, it's got some kind of deception. Lying and deception could be very different. And you can be pronouncing, I didn't do anything, but that doesn't mean it wasn't done and I didn't know about it. And then she takes a high ground statement, when I willingly handed my phone over. Those two things together are suspect. When I hear that, I want to ask a little bit more. I want to poke and say, wait a minute, let's talk more about that. Then she actually admits her deleted calls because these are among the 20. And that's an outright contradiction to the spirit of the question. Did you delete any calls? No, but they were among the 20. Well, that's weird. And this is the first time we actually see turtling. It's when that neck slides down inside the body to protect arteries. We actually see that now. It's actually that your shoulders are rising, your neck doesn't shrink, but it looks that way. And so we know she feels the threat at this point, and she loses some defiance. I see the residual emotion you brought up, Mark, about her friend being dead, withdrawing the sides of her mouth. Then she's back to defiance about whether the calls are being answered or not. There's a ton of non-contracted denials in here. I don't know they mean anything. I'm going to leave that one for somebody else to talk about, Chase. But it goes on and on and on. And it could be when I went through interrogator school at Fort Huachuca, Arizona in the 1900s, you would have these kids who went through this course and they came out and they could not talk like a normal person anymore. They'd say, by this, I mean, and they would always say not, do not, did not. Could be the people she hangs around with because of clarity. We all know that police talk on radios and they're more clear on their language for that reason. So there's always that. After he admonishes her and she goes back to baseline, the first video feed, which you would think we would see a lot of deviation, but we don't. She goes back down to baseline. I wish she would have kept more pressure on the facts about the phone because she was showing vulnerability and I have a better feel for what we're getting. But it could just be she's outright angry because she's being accused. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, I tend to agree. A lot of non-contracted denials, but she's saying what seems to be forgotten is that my friend was lying there on the ground. Right after this, there's immediate lip compression when the lips squeeze together. And this is what we call a self-restraint behavior. And it's maybe the body's way of holding back. You're going to see it right before somebody tells a half-truth or they're trying to prevent some kind of emotional spike from happening. Then we see an increase in her nodding behavior. And I'm personally wondering why she didn't say either his name or his condition, the condition that he was in. That's interesting to me. Other people who were later proven to be truthful brought up their loved ones' names more often, their emotional states directly. Or if they were deceased, they would indicate that a lot more directly. There's one moment in here where she whispers the word well after the attorney reminds her, I don't think anybody's forgotten that. And this is followed by an eye flutter, and this one is closing apps. And I think this is what we refer to as a mini regression. So when people suddenly lose status in a conversation or they get corrected unexpectedly, you're going to see a brief lapse, almost like a child muttering under their breath. That's a mini regression. So it's when people lose status, they get corrected. You're going to see that happening. Something tells me she may not have understood the sentence the lawyer said about continuing to editorialize. The way she nodded instantly, maybe there's a failure to understand that word specifically or something else. I think there was a lack of understanding there. Scott, what do you got?
I got nothing. Oh, I was going to ask you, Chase, what mic are you using?
Why?
Because it sounds really good, and I know you're using your laptop.
Just the old MacBook camera, MacBook microphone.
No kidding.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Greg?
This is the MacBook that came out a month ago.
Okay. Do what, Greg?
Yeah, I was just saying you might want to talk about the Joe thing with the chin.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were muted. That's why I kept going back to you. That's why.
No.
I'm too spaced to even talk about that because I'll get all, I'll misquote or something. I don't want to chance it.
Be tucking on your frog sack.
Not in public, please.
What's a frog sack?
That's what Greg talked about that one time where that guy had the big.
Oh, that's right.
neck.
Who was the guy with the frogs? Who was it? Was it?
It was Andrew.
Oh, it was Andrew.
That's
Yes,
right.
you're right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Frog sack.
We now know that. That we now know.
Navy.
That we now know.
In the Navy.
Yeah. Jeez, man. We ought to go. We ought to do another ones of videos where we talk about the videos we've done, how much fun they were, how weird they were.
That'd be a good idea.
And while we're on that, guys, we're coming up, assuming we're still here in a month, we're coming up on 5 years.
Yeah.
We should do a live Q&A so that people, and Scott, you had the idea about the short video at the end, but a live Q&A for 30, 45 minutes so that people can actually come on and ask.
That'd be great.
Let's do that. Let's do that. And okay.
make it
Yeah, we'll
first week
figure it
of
out.
May.
We'll let Sadie be in charge of the whatever it is. We'll figure it out, so we get the
Why don't we
questions
make
in.
it an hour and a half?
I'm happy to do a long
Sure.
one. That'd be great.
Oh, yeah, we do a long one.
5
Yeah,
years,
man.
guys. 5 years. I can't believe it's been that long.
Yeah. 5 years.
Amazing.
I feel like I've had the flu for 5 years. This thing's horrible. You don't want this thing.
That stinks, man.
I'm not getting it. I'm all the way over here. You're all the way
That's
over
true.
there. That's the great,
We won't
the
visit
great thing
you.
about this arrangement. We don't pass on visits to each other. It's like,
No germ passing.
yeah.
Yeah, you almost got it, Chase, because I would have been there in the middle of it, and you still would have been like, "Oh, hey, man, it's okay. I'll hang around.
Give me a sip of that drink, bro.
Hey, what's up? It's cool. I trust you.
What's your
Trust me."
The calls to Nicole were deleted from your phone before you turned that phone into law enforcement, weren't they?
Not by me.
By somebody else?
I never deleted any calls when I willingly handed my phone over.
You claim that you didn't delete calls, but you do know that your phone was forensically analyzed and those calls were in the deleted file folder, correct?
I have seen that, but there were 20 calls, all in a group that were all deleted. So cherry picking a few makes it look a different way.
Okay, so we'll get to those. I'm not cherry picking anything, okay? I'm asking you questions about the records.
Which I would love a copy of if I could see.
We'll get to that in a second. I'm just going by your memory. You've seen these records a bunch of times. You've been questioned about these records a bunch of times, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we know that you called at 6:07, 6:08, or thereabouts, and about 6:23. 2 to Nicole, 1 to Brian, correct?
Correct.
And you'll agree with me that notwithstanding those phone calls, by the way, did you leave voicemails?
No.
When did you hang up? Before it went to voicemail, or was it into voicemail before you hung up?
So it was a bit of a hysterical scene that morning, and I was in a state of shock, and I was just calling my sister and my brother-in-law. They did not answer the phone. I cannot tell you when I hung up because it was a hysterical scene. I was in a state of shock. Everyone was running around, and what seems to be forgotten is that my friend was lying there on the ground.
Oh, I don't think anybody's forgotten that. You, in fact, did not leave voicemails for any of those 3 calls, did you?
Again, I don't have my phone record in front of me.
And that's because Nicole didn't get any voicemails, because the calls were answered, right?
The calls were not answered.
You do agree with me that Brian and Nicole Albert, Brian Albert being a police officer, never came out of the house, right?
Correct. Neither did any neighbor.
I know you'd like to continue editorializing after the fact. There's probably a time and a place for it. This isn't it. If you can answer my question, I'd ask that you do that. Did Brian Albert come out of the house?
No.
Did Nicole Albert come out of the house?
No.
Thank you. May I inquire, Your Honor?
Yes.
Fact of the matter is, according to those Celebrite records and that extraction from your own phone, every one of the calls that you made to John O'Keefe's phone between 12:29 and, I'm sorry, between 12:14 and 12:50 a.m. was deleted and unrecovered, correct?
I didn't understand that report, and I'm not an expert.
When you compare the two, you saw a bunch of calls on John O'Keefe's phone, right? You know he couldn't have deleted them. He passed away, right?
Correct.
You saw your cell phone extraction, which is the handshake for John O'Keefe's phone. And all your calls are missing, right?
Objection.
Can you answer that question?
I'm confused. That paper, I don't understand it. It was vague. There were numbers. There were calls everywhere. There was a number of missing calls.
There's a bunch of missing calls, right? You didn't see any of the calls that were reflected on John O'Keefe's phone. Is that right? Yes or no? They're not there.
A lot of calls are missing. I'm not really even sure what's there because the numbers are it's all redacted.
So you were not seeing any redacted calls, Ms.
The page you just had in front of me was redacted.
It's now an exhibit.
It's now an exhibit. Your personal information was redacted. None of the calls were redacted now.
The numbers, I don't know people's phone numbers. I just have them as contacts.
Ms. McCabe, you just said a second ago, and we can do this all day long, or we can just make it simple. The fact of the matter is that report did not show any of the calls that John O'Keefe's phone report showed, correct? From 12:14 to 12:50.
I believe there was one on there.
5:52. That's the next morning, ma'am. Right?
Were there other calls in that time period on the Celebrate?
You just said there weren't. You just looked at them.
I've told you that Celebrate report was extremely hard to read.
Right. Fact is, there are no calls on your own phone extraction between you and John O'Keefe between 12:14 and 12:50. Would you just agree with that, at least on that report?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
The fact is that you deleted your call records before you turned your phone in, didn't you, Ms. McCabe? That's what that report shows.
Absolutely not.
You sanitized your phone because you didn't want the police to know who you had been calling or the fact that you had been calling John O'Keefe's phone incessantly, correct?
Incorrect. I willingly turned over my phone.
After you deleted your phone call logs, correct?
Absolutely not.
What date did you turn your phone over?
Possibly February 3rd.
How many days after this incident was that?
4 or 5.
So you had plenty of time to talk to that friends and family group and ultimately decide to delete your phone calls, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you ever have any group?
Yeah, that's what the award looks like.
That's great. That's super.
Wow.
So
cute.
yeah,
Is it a bobblehead?
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. I think you bobbleheads. No,
No, don't look
guess
like it.
not.
That's great.
Maybe he might be doing it for you. We can't tell from here.
Yeah, I think he does have. I think I have a bobblehead right now. Okay, here we go. Chase, what do you got?
There's a problem I've got with this. She is pretending not to know which numbers are which. She's been through this evidence list, and this trial's been going on for a long time. I would imagine, a murder case might make me look at the paper often and frequently. And she's acting as though there's no deletions and no possible action taken on her part. If numbers were deleted from an innocent person's phone, would you think that maybe they might say they didn't delete anything and that they would show emotion about this? Or do you think maybe an innocent person would say that somebody tampered with the phone if something was deleted? Someone tampered with my phone. So now we have a missing perpetrator here. And do you think that there might be a chance an innocent person would openly and confidently deny having anything to do with the deletions, which we're kind of seeing is starting to stretch a little bit? And there's an obvious effort here to be what I would call maybe difficult and detail driven. I think most people would assume that an innocent person would be very straightforward about the whole issue. Truth is almost always very simple. Lies are complicated. When someone's telling the truth, they don't usually need a user manual for a Cellbrite report, which it seems is the case here. And if an innocent person was calling somebody's phone because they were worried about them, wouldn't you assume that they would just say, I was worried about them, instead of giving some kind of obfuscated answer about not understanding a Cellbrite report and not being an expert in it? Interesting point. When she makes her denial about deleting the calls, what happens? Every other denial she's made in these clips involves a no head shake. This time she nods during the denial. She says absolutely not twice in response to two questions about deleting these call logs. In each of those, there's nodding. The second denial is followed by a left head turn, which is outside of her baseline. Maybe something's going on in the courtroom there, open to that. There's also an increase in her breathing rate. She's breathing more often. So what do we have so far here? We've seen a sudden spike in blinking under pressure, subtle emotional detachment, a shift from I didn't do it to why would I do that? That's a big shift. I didn't do it to why would I do that? And in the nodding during the denials, we've got a solid behavioral pattern starting to form, not proof of deception, but definitely enough for a second look. And it's about to get a lot deeper here in just a few seconds. So keep in mind that if we say something is stretching the truth or deception, we're not saying this person's guilty of the crime or this person was involved in a cover-up. We're talking about this exact instance here. Something just doesn't add up for me, especially with this clip here. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, there are a couple. I agree with you. Watch that second time that she does the absolutely not. I think it's the jury she clocks. I think it is. And there's almost a smile when she does that. The second, absolutely not. And I'm sure Sadie will plug that up and use it for us. But look, you can see with her, what's interesting is when he has something on her and when she feels empowered. When she feels empowered, she's defiant and aggressive. When she's not, we're going to see that turtling come back. She starts off by chaffing and redirect because he's using facts and a report. When you say chaff and redirect, she's going to spew out something. In this case, there's too much data I can't understand, and boom, and then turn and go away. And she tries that. This not able to understand this report. And I agree with you. Look, this is my phone. If I think this is the case, I would know everything possible there is before I'm called in front of a murder trial. Now, she's not on trial. She's a witness, and he's undermining her believability for Karen Reed's defense. Look, if you had normal questions, you would never ask a question like he just did there. Again, very complex question, compound question, too confusing. You would say things like, let's discuss your phone calls. John's phone shows inbound calls from you at X, Y, and Z. Did you make those calls? And she'd say yes or no. And the extracted phone records show that you made those calls and deleted them to non-recoverable. Do you see that on the report? Then you got her standing flat-footed and nowhere to go, but she's feeling pretty confident in this. And then you would say, explain why you would delete any call going out to him at this time frame, because that's what you really want to know. And you would undermine anything she's saying. But he's trying to persuade a jury, and it might be enough for him to just force this issue and not to clarify. She goes back to stern approach the minute she knows he has nothing. Once he has that falls apart, she goes back to being defiant and aggressive and all of that. But then when he comes back to her, there are no other calls that have had this done. Watch the turtling come back. Her neck shrinks down into her body. She does absolutely not. The second one with a slight hint of a smile. And I would have said, if I were in his shoes right here, did somebody else delete those? If so, how'd that happen? It's your phone. And this was done before you handed it over. I would have put it on the rocks right there. But he couldn't. I think it probably has to do with the way he's supposed to question. That was not admissible. Or maybe he just asked bad questions. Scott, what do you got? Or Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, listen, I agree, Chase, in that there's some not very good answers given here. There would be better answers out there, let's say. We'd all feel a lot better if some better answers were given. And I agree with you, Greg, that the questions could be a lot better to get the better answers. So it's a bit of 6 of one and half a dozen of the other here. She seems to consistently contest the deleted calls. So there is that from that point of view. Like, she is against the idea consistently, but her answers as to why it happened, they're not good. You're right, Chase. Her illustrator is really good on the redactions in there. So I think she does truly feel that there's some redaction in there. There's something not there. Now, I've not seen the document, so I mean, it would be an easy one for us to, if we could see the document, to go, look, here's the reality, and it's not reasonable to say that's redacted. Or like, yeah, no, it's totally reasonable. There is some data missing from that she, and when was she shown this evidence? Was it a long time ago? Was it that day? So how much can she investigate it? And I just don't know the answer to that. But even with that, Chase, I'm still concerned that there could be better answers. But then, you know, data, which is this sheet that we have, data is not analysis, is not evidence. So, and it seems to me that the lawyer here is going, there's the data, so there's the evidence. And it seems like he's not giving us the analysis, or he's going, well, what's your analysis of that? And she's going, well, I don't understand the data, so I can't even analyze it. So you don't have any evidence. I think everybody's a little bit inept in this situation. So it's not moving us very far forward. So it does feel a little bit frustrating, I think, and a little bit odd and questionable. And I'm going to put it down to the odd and questionable nature of the questions being asked and therefore the answers being given. And what I wrote down here, because I was just working out this as I went along, I was even, you know, even at this stage, I was thinking, hang on, this is the Karen Reed case. Like, what's going on? What's going on here? Who's is she accused? Is this person accused of something? Like, what on earth is going on here? And then I went, okay, the attorney here is trying to create doubt for the benefit of Karen Reed. And if that is what's happening, not a bad job, because I'm very doubtful and confused around a lot of stuff here. You know, I just don't know what exactly is going on. So is this to cast doubt? If it is, I think it's doing a good job.
Yeah, and that's what it's for.
Doubt.
But this shows in your life, if you want to cause confusion, ask complex questions that people can't understand and answer, or give them data they can't understand and get them to try to draw some kind of conjecture from it.
Right.
You create chaos.
But still, at the end of the day, even with that, Chase, I think you're right in that there got to be some better answers out there. Even if she were to go, oh, okay, let me just reframe the question and I'll be able to give you a decent answer. Here's what happened. Here's what happened. Scott.
Yeah, again, I'm going to pass because I'm whacked on flu dope.
Sorry, man.
May I inquire, Your Honor?
Yes.
Fact of the matter is, according to those Celebrite records and that extraction from your own phone, every one of the calls that you made to John O'Keefe's phone between 12:29 and, I'm sorry, between 12:14 and 12:50 a.m. was deleted and unrecovered, correct?
I didn't understand that report, and I'm not an expert.
When you compare the two, you saw a bunch of calls on John O'Keefe's phone, right? You know he couldn't have deleted them. He passed away, right?
Correct.
You saw your cell phone extraction, which is the handshake for John O'Keefe's phone, and all your calls are missing, right?
Objection.
Can you answer that question?
I'm confused. That paper, I don't understand it. It was vague. There were numbers. There were calls everywhere. There was a number of missing calls.
There's a bunch of missing calls, right? You didn't see any of the calls that were reflected on John O'Keefe's phone. Is that right? Yes or no? They're not there.
A lot of calls are missing. I'm not really even sure what's there because the numbers are it's all redacted.
So you were not seeing any redacted calls, Ms.
The page you just had in front of me was redacted.
It's now an exhibit.
It's now an exhibit. Your personal information was redacted. None of the calls were redacted now.
The numbers, I don't know people's phone numbers. I just have them as contacts.
Ms. McCabe, you just said a second ago, and we can do this all day long, or we can just make it simple. The fact of the matter is that report did not show any of the calls that John O'Keefe's phone report showed, correct? From 12:14 to 12:50.
I believe there was one on there.
5:52. That's the next morning, ma'am. Right?
Were there other calls in that time period on the Celebrate?
You just said there weren't. You just looked at it.
I've told you that Celebrate report was extremely hard to read.
Right. The fact is, there are no calls on your own phone extraction between you and John O'Keefe between 12:14 and 12:50. Could you just agree with that, at least on that report?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
The fact is that you deleted your call records before you turned your phone in, didn't you, Ms. McCabe? That's what that report shows.
Absolutely not.
You sanitized your phone because you didn't want the police to know who you had been calling or the fact that you had been calling John O'Keefe's phone incessantly, correct?
Incorrect. I willingly turned over my phone.
After you deleted your phone call logs, correct?
Absolutely not.
What date did you turn your phone over?
Possibly February 3rd.
How many days after this incident was that?
4 or 5.
So you had plenty of time to talk to that friends and family group and ultimately decide to delete your phone calls, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you ever have any group? Clear. Did you delete any of your calls before you turned your phone into law enforcement?
I spoke with the 2 officers that I handed my phone over to, and I asked if I could delete the personal conversations with my daughters. And they said absolutely yes, that I could.
So other than calls with your daughters that you did you delete any other calls on your phone at all?
There were
McCabe?
text messages. It was actually text messages with my daughters that I deleted, and that was all I deleted.
Did you delete any phone calls?
I do not recall deleting any phone calls at all. I would have no reason to delete anything.
So that's very different than I didn't delete any phone calls. I do not remember deleting phone calls means you might have.
In day-to-day life, people delete things, but I do not recall deleting any phone calls.
In day-to-day life, did you delete any of the calls to John O'Keefe?
No,
Did you delete any of your calls with Nicole Albert?
no,
Did you delete any of your calls with Brian Albert?
no,
With Chris Albert?
no,
With Julie Albert?
no,
Colin Albert?
no,
With any of the witnesses in this case, did you delete any calls before you turned that phone over?
no, no.
May I please, Madam?
Yes.
Continue.
Love that kid. Okay. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah. Okay. So here's something interesting. She hedges the possibilities of how calls could, or the possibilities of O'Keefe's calls being deleted, but she says no to her deleting the calls. So it is fair to say she's open to the possibility that the calls were deleted, but she is pretty adamant that she did not delete his calls or the calls of anybody else who are witnesses in this trial. And that feels, from my point of view, what I saw, what I heard from her, that seems pretty full on, that she's adamant about that. But I'm open to somebody seeing and hearing something different. Chase, you got any other thoughts about that?
Yeah, as I understand it, she previously said she doesn't even know how to delete data from a phone. And I thought this was interesting to hear. And when she's confirming deleting the messages between her and her daughters, we're seeing the same nodding we saw in the previous clip where she's denying. It's the same nodding as when we saw her denying in another clip. She's been vehemently denying deleting calls, and now the denial is a long transderivational search where her eyes are kind of going all over the place, followed by a statement of memory of deleting instead of a denial anymore. Now it's about memory. I don't remember if I did it. So this is followed by a statement about her motive and not her actions. And this is a very different thing than a denial, as the attorney points out. That's a psychological shift, and it's from a behavior to a justification. So when we see people who are open and honest in court, they usually say stuff like, I didn't do that. And you're more likely to hear, why would I do that, from someone who might be concealing or deflecting something. So that why is a mask. So when the attorney's going through all of these names, there's a distinct difference between her saying no to all the names when certain names come up. I don't know these people, but I thought it would be interesting if you know the case. There's no cluster of behavior here, but that's definitely a change in behavior on a few of those. And the denial about deleting the calls overall from the last couple of clips seems to be deceptive just based on the standard behavioral analysis guidelines that we follow. There's a lot to unpack here, and I wish we had more time to do it, but this is now getting way more into the realm of potential for deception. Greg?
Yeah, Mark, you want another answer? This one would have me crawling her ass if she were in interrogation doing this, because she does one thing, and I'm going to talk about one thing, and that is listen to that tone and the long I before deleted. Listen to the pregnant pause between that was all boom, 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 I, overpronounced, deleted. Go back even in this clip and listen to every other time she says I, deleted. That's powerful. That's powerful. And to your point, Chase, a deviation, a dramatic deviation from baseline should get my undivided attention over that one thing right there, because it is a deviation from everything in the sentence structure around it. That's all I got.
Clear. Did you delete any of your calls before you turned your phone into law enforcement?
I spoke with the 2 officers that I handed my phone over to, and I asked if I could delete the personal conversations with my daughters. And they said absolutely yes, that I could.
So other than calls with your daughters that you did you delete any other calls on your phone at all?
There were
McCabe?
text messages. It was actually text messages with my daughters that I deleted, and that was all I deleted.
Did you delete any phone calls?
I do not recall deleting any phone calls at all. I would have no reason to delete anything.
So that's very different than I didn't delete any phone calls. I do not remember deleting phone calls means you might have.
In day-to-day life, people delete things, but I do not recall deleting any phone calls.
In day-to-day life, did you delete any of the calls to John O'Keefe?
No,
Did you delete any of your calls with Nicole Albert?
no,
Did you delete any of your calls with Brian Albert?
no,
With Chris Albert?
no,
With Julie Albert?
no,
Colin Albert?
no,
With any of the witnesses in this case, did you delete any calls before you turned that phone over?
no, no.
May I approach that?
Yes.
Sight, correct?
Absolutely not.
Did you take any steps whatsoever, any steps whatsoever, to influence Carrie Roberts' statements?
No,
Because that would be collusion, wouldn't it?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you write a text to the group, including Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Matt McCabe, where you informed them that, quote, and this is, Your Honor, on page 2158, where you informed them, quote, Carrie is here going over timeline, end quote.
correct.
So you reported back to Brian, Nicole, and Matt that Carrie was where?
She came over my house.
And you two sat down and went over a, quote, timeline together.
Peggy spoke to Carrie.
Yes or no? I didn't ask about Peggy.
Well, that's where the timeline started at.
Did you ask Carrie, or did Carrie show up at your house and, quote unquote, go over a timeline with you?
Carrie showed up asking to sit down with me to do a timeline so we would remember everything that had happened.
And you wanted to be super helpful about that, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
Ask
Yeah.
it differently.
Sure. You wanted to be helpful to Carrie Roberts.
The 2 of us were trying to figure out what had happened to our friend.
And so you made sure that you created and drafted with Carrie Roberts a timeline for her, correct?
I didn't make sure of anything. She was the one that asked me to do it.
And not only did you create a timeline, you then reported back to your group, Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Matt McCabe, that she was creating this timeline with you on February 1st, 2022. Isn't that right?
Yes.
After you created or drafted this timeline with Carrie, she actually sat for an interview with the police, did she not? That's not in the chats. I'm just asking you. She sat down for an interview with the police, didn't she?
When?
You tell me. That's my question.
I'm not sure of when you're talking about.
Okay, let's start over.
Yes.
After this timeline was created on February 1st, at some point thereafter, Carrie Roberts conducted a formal interview with the police about this case, correct?
Do you have the report of that date?
We're sort of bearing the lead. She did the interview in your living room, ma'am. Right?
There was, on Tuesday, 2 officers came to the house and she sat in the other room and spoke with them.
So, using my question, she did the interview at your house.
Oh, they came to my house to interview me, and she happened to be there. So they asked if they could speak with her also.
Okay. Did she or did she not do an interview at your house?
Did, yes.
That wasn't that hard. You were present for that interview, weren't you?
I was eating dinner.
Where's Will?
He's hanging out with me here in the room.
Hey, man.
Hello.
We had Will come on a few minutes ago, but we had him on where you can't show it on this because it's an off-screen thing. Your hair's getting long, dude.
Yeah, we can only see your chin.
Looking
There you
good.
go. Holy smokes. Yeah, I think you're right, Mark. Our algorithm's going to change. Our demographics is going to change a lot for this one spike. How old are you now?
Goodbye to everybody.
Bye.
Are you
Good time in
15 or
Vegas.
16?
16 years old. I turned 17 in
Did you
June.
get a car yet?
No, not yet. No.
Come on,
Chase, when are you going to get him a car, man?
Well, monster trucks take time to save up for.
Dad. Well, yeah.
True.
Don't let me influence your purchase options because you'll be in trouble.
Don't listen to Greg. Don't do it.
Monster trucks aren't as fun as fast things.
No, don't do a fast car.
Sports cars are much better.
I agree. I got a truck too, but I like my car better.
Yeah.
Okay, girls, enough car talk.
All right. Thanks, man.
Good to see you all.
See you later, man.
Well,
That's going to change our demo, at least for that one spot. All right, Greg, what do you got?
So she's back to defiant with a correct, not yes, correct. Her chin is up. She's out of turtling, and there's a flash of anger when she says, Carrie asked me to do the timeline so I could remember everything. And then she makes hard eye contact with what I assume is the jury for only the second time in this entire video. Her cadence slows and her tone goes to telling. So I think she's defiant and angry again. Then she chaffs and redirects to get away from where she did the interview. She knows what he's asking. She's avoiding. That doesn't look good. And it is playing right into his hands if he's trying to undermine her credibility with a jury, I would say. There's the last, and this is the last time we see a tongue jut, when she's called out for the interview being in the living room. And that's Desmond Morris again saying, baby's first no, rejecting food. All that plays right into the hands of saying, is this credible testimony to the jury, in my opinion? Chase, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And we're kind of reaching a crescendo of questionable behavior here. I think it's suspicious. We don't often see openly truthful people act this way. Just to be very straightforward, there's confusion about timelines, litigating every statement, acting uncertain about key details that are well known, that are known, uncertainty about known information, and almost what appears to be deliberately evasive behavior on points that should be normal and rational. Just, hey, someone's missing. I called him a shitload of times because they were missing. And there's all kinds of weird deflection about all of that kind of stuff. And when somebody knows a timeline well and they respond by limiting information, that's not what we usually see in openly truthful people. If there's a message to someone that's openly and honestly a desire to review details of the case, like let's walk through the timeline, which I believe any group of friends would do following a homicide of one of their friends. Why would there be a need to obfuscate and dodge and minimize details and add in ambiguity about everything? It should just be, yes, of course we did this. Of course we did that. I think it's a normal behavior. But when details get vague and the questions aren't that complex, it's usually not about memory. Typically, when I see it, it's about management. So managing some kind of perception or managing maybe liability. If there was a truly innocent gathering of people with the intent to establish some kind of timeline, and with the second intent being to find a killer, why would that need to be hidden and dodged? I find that bizarre. So if a meeting somehow occurred before a police interview and an openly honest person wants to make sure the details are all there before the police show up, why would they deliberately try to avoid saying that? So if the information is truthful, honest, and rational, why is there an effort to inject some ambiguity into very simple questions? I'm not saying there's guilt here, but I'm definitely saying that something is off. I understand there's a confrontational conversation going on. It's by nature. And understand there's stress about how she's being perceived in the public eye. She's been through a whole lot with like the online mob or whatever. But why not just be direct and honest about things if there were simply things that normal people would do, which I think a lot of this is. Even if you're 100% innocent, you don't dodge obvious behavior. So calling a friend repeatedly, that's normal. Sitting down to figure out the story, that's normal. So when you treat those normal behaviors like they're radioactive, that's when things start feeling way off, even to the jury, even to an untrained eye. Something's going to be like, I don't know what it was, but something's not right about this. So as a final thought here, motive tends to shift behavior when someone's recalling details. So even behavior that seems normal, like calling somebody who's missing a bunch of times, meeting to discuss all this stuff, getting ready to speak with the police, why not talk about the incidents and the details as if there's nothing to hide? Why obfuscate and do all that stuff? I think this behavior has the potential to transfer a lot of doubt in the jury's mind, even if they aren't behavior profilers. People get intuition and gut feelings like something's just not adding up. Mark, what do you?
Yeah, look, I think you're both right. The answers are ambiguous. They're not, let's just say they're not as good as they could be. You know, they're not as certain as they could be. I agree with everything you're saying there. At the same time, for me, there is a justifiable confusion in this last one here. When I heard the interviewer, the questioner, talk about a formal interview, my mind went to a police station, you know, a table, two chairs. That's now I wasn't there at the event. But my mind goes there. Then I find out, what the interviewer is talking about is what seems to me an ad hoc interview that happens in somebody's home, apropos of them being there as well. So I can justify the confusion with the person being interviewed, not quite understanding that the questioner, when they talk about a formal interview, is talking about an interview that could happen at the home because the person was there. Okay. So, and in my mind, I would go, why would you call it a formal interview? That doesn't sound like it was a formal interview. Wouldn't you just say, hey, so, you know, she was there at the time, the police interviewed you. What happened there? So the question is set up in such a way that it can cause confusion in me and potentially confusion in her, or she may be acting that confusion, okay? But even that it's set up, the question is set up in this way in the first place, says to me that the questioner is trying to create confusion, not trying to clarify answers. And because of that, I can't be certain of the veracity of the answers that are even given, because the questioner is not asking questions in good faith, potentially. They're asking questions in order to cast doubt. And so what we get is some doubtful answers. I would love to see the same person questioned in a way that isn't trying to cast doubt, but is trying to get to a specific point of guilt or innocence around a crime being committed. But that's not what's happening here. Doubt is being cast, and therefore I'm concerned about the doubtful answers that come up. That's just that's just me. Oh, and then at the end, the questioner says, that wasn't that hard. Well, that's belittling. And so, yeah, I can imagine what happens after this is more rising of the hackles. Like if you wanted to really annoy some Bostonian, person who is around police quite a lot, that wasn't that hard. Like that's gonna crank it up, isn't it? So I should maybe have a look at the video to see what happens after this, because there's probably more of the same. Yeah.
There's 3.5 hours of this.
Right.
Thing, so I just cut it down. There are 24 clips that are this long. I just cut it way back to get to this. I transcribed it and cut it back to this. So, yeah.
And does it ramp up even more, Greg?
Yeah, she gets a little more irritated, a little more agitated.
Right. Scott, back to you.
All right. Again, I'm whacked on dope, so I'm going to pass to be fair. Okay, Chase, you win that one. Nicely done.
Yeah, thank you.
Sight, correct?
Absolutely not.
Did you take any steps whatsoever? Any steps whatsoever to influence Carrie Roberts' statements?
No.
Because that would be collusion, wouldn't it?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you write a text to the group, including Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Matt McCabe, where you informed them that, quote, and this is, Your Honor, on page 2158, where you informed them, quote, Carrie is here going over timeline, end quote.
Correct.
So you reported back to Brian, Nicole, and Matt that Carrie was where?
She came over my house.
And you two sat down and went over a, quote, timeline together.
Peggy spoke to Carrie.
Yes or no? I didn't ask about Peggy.
Well, that's where the timeline started at.
Did you ask Carrie, or did Carrie show up at your house and, quote unquote, go over a timeline with you?
Carrie showed up asking to sit down with me to do a timeline so we would remember everything that had happened.
And you wanted to be super helpful about that, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
Ask
Yeah.
it differently.
Sure. You wanted to be helpful to Carrie Roberts.
The two of us were trying to figure out what had happened to our friend.
And so you made sure that you created and drafted with Carrie Roberts a timeline for her, correct?
I didn't make sure of anything. She was the one that asked me to do it.
And not only did you create a timeline, you then reported back to your group, Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Matt McCabe, that she was creating this timeline with you on February 1st, 2022. Isn't that right?
Yes.
After you created or drafted this timeline with Carrie, she actually sat for an interview with the police, did she not? That's not in the chats. I'm just asking. She sat down for an interview with the police, didn't she?
When?
You tell me. It's my question.
I'm not sure of when you're talking about.
Okay, let's start over.
Yes.
After this timeline was created on February 1st, at some point thereafter, Carrie Roberts conducted a formal interview with the police about this case, correct?
Do you have the report of that date?
We're sort of bearing the lead. She did the interview in your living room, ma'am. Right?
There was, on Tuesday, 2 officers came to the house and she sat in the other room and spoke with them.
So, using my question, she did the interview at your house.
Oh, they came to my house to interview me, and she happened to be there, so they asked if they could speak with her also.
Okay. Did she or did she not do an interview at your house?
Did, yes.
That wasn't that hard. You were present for that interview, weren't you?
I was eating dinner.
Okay, out of 3 hours of court stuff, we came up with what? What is that? 25 minutes probably? 25 minutes?
Yeah,
Something
about
like
6
that.
videos with.
Yeah. All right. So Mark, what did you see in all this? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of reiterate what I said on that last video, is that because I think of what is being tried to be achieved by the questioner here, I'm concerned about the indefinite nature of the answers because of the line of questioning. But I totally agree, Greg and Chase, that there are better answers that she should be giving. And potentially she could have came up with better questions herself, so she could have given a better answer. And actually, probably you're right. She could just give a better answer to the terrible questions that are being asked. But in the end, they're not great questions. They're driving to create confusion and doubt, and they do a good job of that. That's my take on it. Chase, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. And you don't need to be in a courtroom to spot deceptive behavior. When somebody's telling the truth, they usually want to share. When somebody's managing perception, they usually want to limit. And the contrast, it usually shows up in every conversation if you're watching for it. So keep a lookout for that in your daily life. Am I seeing limiting or sharing information? And am I seeing weird answers to simple questions? That's one of the first things I teach everybody when I teach deception detection. Am I seeing weird or unusual answers to simple questions? And I get it, Mark. I agree. These questions were not exactly the simplest in the world. Greg?
This is a complex mess because what they're trying to do is undermine her story, at the same time kind of project that possibly the murder was done inside the house and he was brought out. So it's a double-edged sword. It's not just trying to undermine, it's also insinuating that you're part of a cover-up for murder. So it's really complex. But Chase, a lot like what you just said, when you try to resist interrogation, you do one thing: you try to avoid answering the question. And I'll leave it at that and say it's hard to be credible in front of a jury and to convince the jury that you're being credible when you're not answering questions. And if all you have to do is sow doubt, which is what you're trying to do in this case, this is a very effective means of doing that. Now, because there was a mistrial and a retrial coming up, we'll see exactly how it works next. 150 witnesses on the list they plan to call. So this will be around a little while. By the way, Karen Reed did a 1-hour interview just recently with a TV station. We chose this because we want to show both sides of the story. But if you're interested, write down below, and we'll cover that Karen Reed interview as well.
All right,
Scott.
And don't forget, we put all of our notes in a PDF and send them out to you. So below will be a link to where you can get that. You can look at the notes of what everybody had to say, except for me, obviously, this time. But other than that, I think this is a good one, fellas, and we'll see you next time.